It's the boy Rick Flair Mirage, Blackbeard Mirage, the world's greatest historian. You're back for another Mirage University Classic. Fall semester, Constellation of Libra. We in it. Salute to all the people out there. Tomorrow is Friday. Hopefully everything good with you. Good morning. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Today we're going to go over some more Autochthonous Aboriginal history. All right, you all will like this one. It'll be another classic. And we're going to clear up some cobwebs and misunderstandings of the early civilizations of quote-unquote America. That being North, Central, and South America. We'll look a little bit into who the first inhabitants of the Americas was, who the first humans of the Americas was. And we will be clearing up basically just, the identity of who the real American is. Now, before I go into this tape, why am I keep pinpointing on the American? The American actually is the true identity of quote-unquote black people. All right. Our nationality actually is, American. All right. Or at least the nation we come from is America. Now, you all have been actually lied to and greatly deceived. But this actually is the truth. So just because you have people of European descent that were born here, that doesn't make them American. Just because you have people of Chinese descent that were born here, that doesn't make them American. Just because you have people of so-called even African descent that may have been born here, that doesn't make them American. The Americans actually are the copper-colored Aboriginal people that were here prior to the arrival of the Europeans, and the sons and daughters of those copper-colored Aboriginal people. All right. Now, although the brothers and sisters on the continent that we call Africa today share melanin, and they share some of the different shades and characteristics as us, as you can look closely into us, you can see that we are two different, types of people. One thing you can see is that the beards that a lot of the men from North America grow, a lot of so-called Africans don't grow the same kind of beards we grow over here. All right. So the brothers over here, our beards are a lot different than some of the other brothers in other places of the world. And also, too, a lot of us here really are more of a copper-colored, reddish-colored, bronze-colored, gold-colored tone type of person. Although you do have dark-skinned brothers and sisters that's actually Aboriginal American, that's, true. But a lot of us do share that gold, reddish tone. All right. So that means that some of the original, Americans were these copper-colored people, ranging from dark copper-colored, medium copper-colored, all the way to a light copper colored. But either way it goes, these copper colored, bronze colored, melanated people that you all are calling black are actually from North America and indigenous to North America. Let me show you my resource before I go into any reading so you all will see the transparency. All right. America, A Narrative History. This is the book I'm reading, America, A Narrative History. I'm such a good historian and such a good researcher. You see how transparent I am and how I don't get on here bragging and flexing and make it seem like I made this shit up. Have y'all noticed that on every tape I make that I actually give my resource and I try to even show you? Thank my mom and dad for that. All right. So I'm going to read into a chapter called Pre-Columbian Indian Civilizations. Now, although they use this word Indian, you can substitute the word Indian for Aboriginal American. You can substitute the word Indian for Moorish American. And for lack of, better words, you can even substitute the word Indian for Black American or so-called black person. So you'll hear me use the word Indian, but we still know who we're talking about, the Aboriginal copper-colored Americans. All right. Pre-Columbian Indian civilizations. The first humans in North America discovered an immense continent with extraordinary climate and environmental diversity. Coastal plains, broad grasslands, harsh deserts, and soaring mountain ranges generated distinct environments, social structures, and cultural patterns. By the time Columbus had happened upon the New World, the native peoples of North America had developed a diverse array of communities in which more than 400 languages were spoken. Yet despite the distances and dialects separating them, the Indian societies created extensive trading networks that helped spread ideas and innovations. Contrary to the romantic myth of early Indian civilizations living in perfect harmony with nature and one another, the native societies exerted great pressure on their environment and engaged in frequent warfare with one another. So the first thing I want to highlight is that they are saying that, the early civilizations of Americas had a diverse array of communities that spoke over 400 languages. Now, this kind of lines up with a previous tape I made that showed how a lot of the people here were speaking Phoenician or Carthaginian or Hebrew. A lot of the people here were speaking what they call Punic. A lot of the people were speaking Libyan. A lot of the people were speaking Arabic. A lot of the people were speaking, quote unquote, Ethiopian, and a vast amount of other languages that were found here on the land. Ancient Latin, a lot of these ancient languages, Aramaic, etc. So if you want to know what was the language of the various Aboriginal North Americans, there are over 400 languages, okay? Over 400. Hebrew being included in that. So I just kind of want to, once again, also highlight why I said that a lot of our ancestors spoke Hebrew in that past tape. Early cultures. After centuries of quote-unquote nomadic life, what they call it nomadic, the ancient Indians settled in more permanent villages. Thousands of years after people appeared in North America, climatic changes and extensive hunting had killed off the largest mammals. Global warming diminished grasslands and simulated forest growth, which provided plants and small animals for human consumption. The ancient Indians adapted to the new environments by inventing fiber snares, basketry, and mills for grinding nuts, and they domesticated the dog and the turkey. A new cultural stage arrived with the introduction of farming, fishing, and pottery making. Hunting now focused on faster and more elusive mammals: deer, antelope, elk, moose, and caribou. Already by about 500 BC, Indians of the Mexican highlands were consuming plant foods that became the staples of North America, or the New World, chiefly maize or corn, beans, and squash, but also chili peppers, avocados, and pumpkins. So they're telling you right here about, some of the early Aboriginal civilizations. Now, when they talk about these people that were somewhat nomadic and they seem like, they were trying to get a settlement, I think they're talking about the descendants, the sons and daughters that were actually the remnant of the Atlantean Lemurian Empire, because you got to remember that empire and civilization failed. It was highly technological, but I do think that after it failed, some of the brothers and sisters had to start over at a more basic way of life, and they worked their way up from that. So when they talk about, some of these, early ways of life here in America, I think that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the people who actually set up shop here that were the sons and daughters after ancient Atlantis and ancient Lemuria fell. And they also say that the domestication of the dog and the turkey was actually done here. So that's your first thing, that your dog and your turkey was domesticated here in America. So when they talk about man's best friend and all that stuff, these Aboriginal Americans actually domesticated the wild wolf, or what we call him, the dog. All right, let's continue. The Mayans, Aztecs, Chibacas, and Incas. Between the 2000 and 1500 BC, permanent farming towns appeared in Mexico. The more settled life, in turn, provided time for the cultivation of religion, crafts, art, science, administration, and warfare. From about 300 AD to 900 AD, Middle America, or Mesoamerica, developed great city centers complete with gigantic pyramids, temples, and palaces, all supported by the surrounding peasant villages. Moreover, the Mayans developed enough mathematics and astronomy to devise a calendar more accurate than the one the Europeans were using at the time of Columbus. So they're already going into the early Mayan civilization, all right? So we're going into the Mayan civilization, which is actually the original inhabitants of what we call in Mexico, all right? And we also get a picture of these people, too, because I see a lot of folks on the internet, a lot of these Mestizo, bleached out, Spaniard-influenced, quote-unquote Mexicans, they are walking around acting like they are the original Aztecs and they are the original Mayans, that they are the ones responsible for those pyramid complexes, that they are responsible for all the science of Quetzalcoatl, where actually all of that is false, okay? So when I talk about the Amaru or America or Quetzalcoatl, the land of the plumed serpent, these actually are the Mayans, okay? And those pyramids they created actually correlate to that astronomy and that science and mathematics that they were using. So you got to ask yourself, if these ancient people had science and mathematics and astrology, just like these ancient Egyptians, that's kind of showing you a correlation in the cultures, all right? In about 900 AD, the complex of Mayan culture collapsed. The Mayans had overexploited the rainforest upon whose fragile ecosystem they depended. Now, when they talk about the Mayan, Aztec, and Inca civilization collapse, what you're going to see in a minute is that it really didn't collapse. The people just moved north, because when the Spanish started invading into Peru and invading Mexico and Central America, a lot of those brothers and sisters started moving a little more north, and some of them moved south. The ones that moved north started living in the lands of what we call Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, etc., the South. And some of them even moved to the Southwest, such as Texas, Arizona, etc. So that's why you have those pyramid complexes out there. All right. As an archaeologist has explained, too many farmers grew too many crops on too much of the landscape. Deforestation led to hillside erosion and a catastrophic loss of farmland. Overpopulation added to the strain on Mayan society. Unrelenting civil wars erupted among the Mayans. Mayan war parties destroyed one another's cities and took prisoners, who were then sacrificed to the gods in theatrical rituals. Whatever the reasons for weakening the Mayan society, it succumbed to the Toltecs, a warlike people who conquered most of the region in the 10th century. But around 1200 AD, the Toltecs mysteriously withdrew. So right here, we're talking about the Mayan civilization. Basically, what happened is when you start growing on the land and you start, using the soil and over, work the soil, it can deplete the land. So a lot of the reasons these brothers and sisters moved out of there is because the land, wasn't really able to be used. They had kind of overexploited the land and had to move to other places. So as they moved to other places, they were absorbed into whatever, societies were in those places and may have just included what they were bringing. But don't think that the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas just fell off the earth and disappeared. That's not true. They actually are the same people that became the Mississippians and some of these other Aboriginals from the South that you're going to see in a minute. Before I go too deep, I want you to just see a map real quick. Okay, here's a map. Now, right here in the area of Mexico, they're showing you where the Aztecs were. All right, so the Aztecs were residing in the southern part of Mexico. The Mayans were residing in the part that we call in quote unquote middle America. That may be blurry on the screen. The Incans were resided in the area of what we call Peru, or the western part of South America. And these were the different Aboriginals that were, living here in the ancient times. All right, living in the South. All right. And a lot of these people migrated to what we call North America. So our ancestors actually are from the South, from the areas of like middle Mexico, southern Mexico, and South America. All right. Also, before I go too deep, let me show you a picture of these Mayans. Now, I'm going to get this clear so there'll be no mistake on this shit. And I'm going to be very quiet. Here's a picture of some Mayans. Hopefully, I really hope y'all can see this. It says, I'm going to read it. It says, a fresco depicting the Mayan society. A fresco depicting the social division of Mayan society. A Mayan lord at the center receiving offerings. So in the middle, you have the Mayan lord or the emperor. And outside, you have these 4 different brothers giving offerings to the lord or the Mayan emperor in the middle. Don't these look like quote unquote black people to y'all? And they all are copper colored people. Look at this brother right here. He don't look copper colored to you? These are copper colored Aboriginal Americans, the Mayans. This is how they look. Look at this brother right here, copper colored. Look at this brother, dark skin. Look at this brother, dark skin, maroon colored. All right, so these are how y'all ancestors look right here. You see how they holding the scepter? See the different culture and how they dressing? This is how the Aztecs dress. And on their head, a lot of times you will see serpents with their mouth open. A lot of their helmets were actually serpents with the mouth open, which represented Quetzalcoatl, because in a lot of the mythologies, Quetzalcoatl was actually a ancient serpent of wisdom. And they said sometimes the ancestor's head would come through the mouth of Quetzalcoatl and, give actual information and give certain prophecies to the brothers and sisters. But that's why you see that. So I'm going to put this on camera one more time. This is how the ancient Mayans look now. These are not quote unquote Mexican people. These are what you call Negroes or Moors or quote unquote black people. And I'm going to leave this shit right here, because a lot of motherfuckers going to try to flex on us and say, oh, y'all not the original Aztecs. Oh, y'all, claiming the culture that's not y'all's. Oh, y'all culture vulture and all this different stuff. But we made up all that shit. So everything you see in the Mexican culture right now and in the South American culture, we created all that. So even eating out of tortillas and all that. For example, I just went to Subway this morning and got me a little tortito egg cheese sandwich or whatever. My Mayan shit. You know what I'm saying? So once again, like, this is how the brothers look. These are not white people. These are not Mexicans. These are not Spaniards. These are what you all would call Negro or black people. And they were here from the 1500s and prior. So when Christopher Columbus came, when Cortez came, this is who they saw. They saw people that look like this. These are not Mexicans. These are not Native Americans. These are Autochthonous Americans. These are Aboriginal Americans. These are not Native Americans. So these white-looking Native American people you see, they actually are the mixture between those people and the Spaniards. Because when those Spaniards came here, a lot of them mixed in with some of us. So that's how you get these white-looking Native American tribes today. You know, they aren't the original Aboriginal ones. Those are the ones I just showed you. Okay. So yes, it's safe for you to claim Mayan, Aztec, and Incan culture. All right. Let's continue. The Aztecs arrived from the northwest to fill the vacuum, found the city TEnochtitlan, 25 miles north of what is now Mexico City, in 1325, and gradually expanded their control over central Mexico. When the Spanish invaded, listen close, when the Spanish invaded in 1519, the Aztec Empire under Montezuma II ruled over perhaps 5 million people, though estimates range as high as 20 million. Farther south in what is now Colombia, the Chibacas built a similar empire on a smaller scale. Still farther south, the Quechuas, better known as the Incas from the name of their ruler, controlled an empire that by the 15th century stretched 1,000 miles across the Andes Mountain from Ecuador to Chile. It was crisscrossed by an elaborate system of roads and organized under an autocratic government. So they're telling you right here that the Aztecs founded the city known as Tenochtitlan. Now, I find it very funny how this word is spelled. Tenochtitlan, T-E-N-O-C-H-T-I-T-L-A-N. Tenochtitlan. I hope I'm saying it right. But a lot of you all have heard that city before in so-called Mexico. Now, what word do you hear spelled in this? E-N-O-C-H. Enoch. Let me be quiet so y'all can catch what I'm trying to take y'all. Tenochtitlan, Enoch. Tenochtitlan, the book of Enoch. You see where I'm going with it? Let me not tongue twist myself. So, if this place is named Tenochtitlan, we clearly see the word Enoch in the book. Enoch being one of the patriarchs from the Old Testament. And they are saying that the Mayans created this. So could the Mayans possibly have spoken Hebrew? And could the Mayans have possibly been dealing with a lot of the ancient Orthodox, what you all call in Hebrew, mystery systems? Why are they naming their city after Enoch? Tenochtitlan. Very interesting. So now let's move and shift gears to Indian cultures in North America, because I'm about to show you how when a lot of these civilizations started falling from the arrival of the Spaniards, like they just told you right here, when the Spanish invaded in 1519, the Aztecs under Montezuma II ruled over a range of at least as high as 20 million people. So they said that in 1519, when the Spanish invaded, the Aztec ruler was Montezuma II. Have you all ever seen a picture of Montezuma? Montezuma looked like some brother from, once again, from, you know what I'm saying, the hood. Like he looked like a regular so-called black man, or a regular what you all would call a Negro or an African American. If you look at Montezuma, Montezuma looks just like this man up here in the corner, believe it or not. So in other words, Montezuma was a so-called black man. Montezuma looks just like him right here. The pictures I saw of him, skin tone and all that. He was a bronze colored brother. So that means that when they came here, this is who they conquered. You know what I'm saying? This is who they, not conquered rather, but this is who they were encountering. Even in the United States Navy. All right. If I can remember correctly, they say in one of their little chants that they, you know, when they on the seas rowing and showing and stuff like this, they say something about, you know, fighting on the shores of Tripoli all the way to something to the degree of fighting on the land of Tripoli all the way to the shores of Montezuma. All right. So basically, the United States Navy has a certain little part of their song where they talk about fighting on the shores of Tripoli all the way to the coast and the lands of Montezuma. Montezuma is this Aboriginal Aztec from Mexico that these people invaded and fought in the 1500s. The Moors of North Africa or Northwest Africa ruled Tripoli. So the United States, that is referring to the Barbary Corsairs and what's known as the Barbary States Wars that the United States had with the Moors. So let me ask you this. So if the United States fought against the Moors in Tripoli, why are they saying that after we fought the Moors in Tripoli, we fought the Moors or Montezuma? It's showing you a connection that these actually are the same people. All right. So because those Moors in Tripoli lost, that gave them access to come over here and start bothering us. Why? This is why I keep saying that those Moors over there were actually our cousins, and we had been doing trade and connecting with them and communicating with them for thousands of years. All right. So I know I kind of butchered, that little part with the Navy in their song, but just go look it up. Like in their song, they say something along the lines of from the shores of Tripoli all the way to the halls of Montezuma or something like that. But it's showing you that they talking about we fought the Moors that were on the coast of Tripoli or North Africa, and we fought the Moors that were in Central America or in Mexico. And that was Montezuma and the Aztecs. And when this happened, a lot of those, brothers and sisters from Mexico, they started moving north because the Spanish took over that territory. So a lot of them redirected and relocated, and they started coming to the areas of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, and they moved all the way throughout the rest of North America. So let's read about it. Indian cultures of North America. The Indians of the present-day United States, or North America, developed three identifiable civilizations. The Adena-Hopewell culture of the Northeast, 800 BC to 600 AD. The Mississippian culture of the Southeast, 600 AD to 1500 AD. And the Pueblo-Hohokam culture of the Southwest, 400 BC to present. None of these developed as fully as the civilizations of the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas to the south. And the reason why they did is because of the invasion of the Europeans. All right. So they told you that in ancient North America, there were three groups of people. You had the Mississippian culture, which was the southeast, the Adena-Hopewell culture, which is the northeast, and the Pueblo-Hohokam culture, which is in the southwest. So all my brothers and sisters from the southeast right now, you all more than likely, y'all's ancestors was part of this Mississippian culture. All right. So listen up closer. You can get an idea. And also think about how they said that none of these actually were able to develop like the Aztecs, Mayans, and Incas. That's because these Europeans arrived and it was too much fighting with them. And then I tell y'all in the previous tape that you don't create civilizations and technology when you're in the middle of war. So that's why you don't see like these giant indestructible pyramids in North America, because we didn't have enough time to probably create them. We had time when we was in Central and South America and Mexico. But by the time these Europeans arrived, we had to do too much fighting. So you can't be building pyramids when you're fighting. So let's read. The Adena-Hopewell culture, centered in the Ohio River, left behind enormous earthworks and burial mounds, some of them elaborately shaped like great snakes, birds, or other animals. Look at how they shaped as snakes. Remember America, Amaru, land of the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl. Evidence from the mounds suggests a complex social structure and a specialized division of labor. Moreover, the Hopewell Indians developed an elaborate trade network that spanned the continent. The Mississippian culture, centered in the Mississippi River, resembled the Mayan and Aztec societies in its intensive agriculture, substantial town built around central plazas, temple mounds vaguely resembling pyramids, and death cults which involved human sacrifice and torture. Let me read this part. The Mississippian culture, centered in the Mississippi Valley, resembled the Mayan and Aztec societies in its intensive agriculture, substantial towns built around central plazas, temple mounds vaguely resembling pyramids, and death cults. The Mississippians developed a specialized labor force, an effective government, and an extensive trading network. They worshiped the sun. Well, that's what they're going to say, of course. The Mississippian culture peaked in the 14th and 15th century and finally succumbed to diseases transmitted from Europe. And repeat, the Mississippian culture peaked in the 14th and 15th centuries and finally succumbed to diseases transmitted from Europe. Who brought the disease over here, y'all? Those cave people. The arid Southwest hosted irrigation-based cultures, elements of which persist today and heirs of which the Hopis, Zunis, and others still live in the adobe pueblos erected by their ancestors. The most widespread and the best known of these cultures, the Anasazi, enemies' ancestors in the Navajo language, developed in the Four Corners, where the states of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. The Anasazis lived in baked mud adobe structures built 4 or 5 stories high. In contrast to the Mesoamerican and Mississippian cultures, Anasazi society lacked a rigid class structure. The religious leaders and warriors labored much as the rest of the people did. In fact, they engaged in warfare only as a means of self-defense. Hopi means peaceful people. And there is little evidence of human sacrifice or human trophies. So clearly these people in the Southwest, they weren't maybe directly related to some of these Mississippians. So maybe it's just a different, subgroup of Aboriginal American people. But nevertheless, they still, a subset of Aboriginal copper-colored melanated people. But real quick, it says that I want to talk about the Mississippians real quick because they are very interesting. And also because I'm from Georgia, so I know I'm connected to this shit. So they say that a lot of the Mississippian culture, it resembled the Mayan and Aztec societies. And the reason why they knew this is because the intensive agriculture was the same. And a lot of the towns that they built were structured the same as the Aztecs and the Mayans. But nevertheless, the temple mounds, which vaguely resembled pyramids. So a lot of these, what you call Indian mounds, actually are small pyramids. Okay? Small pyramids. All right. So real quick, before I close this out, because I ain't gonna hold y'all too long, we're gonna look at this picture of the Mayans one more time so we can get a picture of how these people look. Now you got to remember that these pictures are coming out of these temples and these different areas of the pyramids that, researchers went in and actually found. So in other words, these are pictures drawn and created by the Mayans themselves, not an artist's depiction of them. All right. Now, some of these may have been photoshopped and recreated to put in these books. But what I'm telling you is that these original pictures of these Mayans were actually in the pyramids, just like you see in ancient Egypt. So these different stories and these different little events that you see the Mayans and the Aboriginal Americans doing, it's the same way that the Egyptians had. So you know how the Egyptians would have a war and Ramses would tell his story in the pyramid? Well, more than likely, this is doing the same thing. So they could be offering, gifts to this emperor because it could have been a war or something that they just won. And they want to show their appreciation. But I just want you to see that these people clearly are so-called black or so-called Negro. All right. You can look at them and tell. You can look at their noses and tell, and you can look at their skin tone and clearly tell. So these are not the people in modern day Mexico. Matter of fact, the remnant of these people actually are in South Mexico. So this is what you had. You had a lot of what you call Afro-Mexicans, okay, or people in Mexico that are so-called black. But a lot of them actually live in the South. All right. A lot of them live in the southern part of Mexico. So that's the thing. When you start going, if you go into Mexico, when you start going deeper into the South, the people get a little darker. All right. This is why when you go in so-called Brazil, they say that that's the largest, place holding so-called black people outside of, Africa or whatever. I've heard something like that before. So it's showing you that, these Aboriginal American people have already been here. These people were not brought here on boats. OK, we've been here and we set up shop here. And our early civilizations were actually the remnant of what was left over after the Atlantean and the Lemurian civilizations. All right. And another thing, too, although I gave you some of the dates like 5000 BC, etc., this stuff is much more ancient than that. All right. You got to remember that a lot of these books, they're going to put certain propaganda. But, this stuff really dates back to more probably like 90,000 BC, 50,000 BC, 75,000 BC, 30,000 BC. It's more than likely in that ballpark. OK. All right. But, you got to remember that these European, quote unquote, scholars, because they aren't as ancient as we are, they try to push up a lot of the time frames. OK, so if they saying that something was 5000 BC, it more than likely was 55,000 BC. All right. They got to always make it to where they fit in the window of time, because they are really no older than about, I would say that the European Caucasian species that we see today is no older than, I would say 6,000 to 10,000 years old. And when I say that, I mean that whatever they sprung from. So I'm not saying that, you know, there were European Caucasians that you see today, the way they look today. I'm not saying that they look like that 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. But all I'm saying is that the ancestor of the one we see today, more than likely, is no older than 6,000 to 10,000 years old. All right. But these Mayan, Aztec, Incan civilizations go back much further than that. So we just had to dive into, you know, the ancient American pre-Columbian civilizations. If you look up the word American in the 1828 dictionary, Webster's dictionary, it will tell you that the Americans are the copper-colored races that were here prior to the arrival of the Europeans. So let me ask you a question then. Who are the real Americans? It's only one people, y'all. It's only one people. So this is why they had to call you a black person, because you see how you make up so many cultures. You make up the Incan culture. You make up the Hebrew culture. You make up the Egyptian culture. You make up the Holy Roman Empire. You make up the Phoenician culture. You make up the Incan. I already said Incan. The Aztec culture. The Mississippian culture. You see what I'm saying? The Olmecs. Because when they talk about the Olmecs, believe it or not, these actually are these same people. Okay. So you can throw the Olmecs in there. All right. So the Olmecs, the Aztecs, and the Incas, these are the original Aboriginal American Autochthonous peoples that are our mothers and fathers directly. So not Africans, but them. So if you hear me talking about ancient Egypt or ancient Jerusalem, I'm more than likely talking about the Incans, Mayans, Mississippians, Hopis. I'm talking about these people, not nobody in Africa. And the reason why I call them that is because you see the same symbology right here. The same way that they did, they would build the Pharaoh in Egypt. They would bury the emperor of the Aztecs the same way. You know, the same way that they structured their pyramids. You see them structured the same way over here. And the way they did hieroglyphics, it was the same. All right. And a lot of the occult, esoteric literature and information and mythology is the same too. And also the same astrology they use, the Egyptians use. So these people, they've been knowing each other for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. All right. So I just wanted to go through this, man. Blackbeard Mirage, Autochthonous American history. Hope you enjoyed the tape. Stay tuned. I'm out.